Let's get into the discussion with our panel. I have a full panel right now. And as is a tradition on Fridays with the Leadership Forum, there is the opportunity for each panelist to take to the podium and give their position on the discussion of the day. And I'll be giving that to you in a moment. But just to open the discussion, there is, of course, the focus today being in the working spaces and the equality issues and concerns for men and women and the disparity that has been there. Perhaps people don't know why this is even an issue to discuss, and I will just introduce you to Reverend Jeffrey Jenga. I introduced him in his absence because he was making his way here, but he's a corporate governance expert and has been a guest on the show before and keen on this particular issue. So if you hear Reverend, don't think it will be nuanced by religiosity. He'll be giving us some sober comments on this issue. Thank you for joining us, and good morning to you.
Good morning to you.
Yes, and also just to open it to you as you start your, as we open this discussion, perhaps your response to this particular occurrence. It can hit anyone. It can be anyone that we know, and seeing that this is a tragedy that would have been avoided given what we've heard about the sugarcane tractors. You can comment on this as we continue. So I'll start with you, but then to Nyambura Mundia as well, who is a lead convener of Women Leaders Hangout. She'll be telling us a bit more about the discussion for the day. Why later on this evening there will be a meeting convened to discuss this issue of the power plays at work. So Reverend, I'll start with you.
The accident that just happened this morning and killed 13 people. You see, when a nation abandons systems and procedures and discipline, then you are rendered to reacting to things as they happen. It is tragic, but it is not new. Either a school will collapse somewhere, or someone is going to go into the sea, or there will be that what we call accidents, or money will be stolen. We are a nation that has abandoned procedures and discipline and doing what is right. And we are reduced to catch up. Someone has drowned, we begin to run there. Why did that happen? Some money is stolen, we begin to run there. A dam has collapsed, and that's what we have reduced ourselves to. We just have to go back and ask ourselves, where was the leadership when the school at Dagoretti collapsed? We used to have systems that ensured that there was systematic check to make sure those things don't happen. We don't seem to want to go back there. We are now busy. When did the Nairobi River begin to get poisoned? It's not when you run that exposure in the news, on the TV. It's been going on for a long time, right. And we pay people to do that work. I feel very frustrated about that, because why would we pay people who are not doing what they are supposed to do? Okay. And why should we then begin running around like this has just happened?
All right, I don't want you to get worked up.
I am.
He is already worked up. But yes, this is just an open opportunity to, especially even if it's condolences to the families of those affected in this particular accident, feel free to the panel, and as well as whoever would be ready to start with the pitch. But I'll start with you, Nyambura, as a lead convener, Women Leaders Hangout, just to set the record straight. This is not an issue of hanging out because it's a Friday and people might misconstrue what that means. But tell us a bit about that Women Leaders Hangout and what we can anticipate this evening.
So, good morning. Also, the Women Leaders Hangout was born out of being in the workplace myself, yes. But also realizing that while women were told to go to school and they went to school, they were told you can get jobs equally as men, they went and applied for the jobs. From the entry level to the pipeline in the workforce, they were left behind every step of the way, which means that as many women entered the workforce, not as many made it to middle management, and lesser of the women made it to senior management. And of course, as the ladder goes, the women fall off. So globally, we have only 22% of women at senior level management, right? And when we come to the numbers in Kenya, they only dwindle because we are an uprising middle income, hopefully, with yes. big four agenda.
Yes.
And so the conversation that we have is, how are we even aware of it? In terms of, I hear the Reverend is in corporate governance. Are we, in our hiring processes, are we aware that there are already disparities, or are we, by hiring other people, increasing the disparities that already are.
Okay.
So the conversation is, can women come and have the tools themselves, but can we also talk to recruiters, managers, in terms of how do we close the gaps themselves?
All right.
Yeah.
I hear affirmative action, and a lot of it has been happening even from the level of education. And there has been now the question of, will there be a disparity, even as we fight for the affirmative action for the women, and end up with the men being in lack? I'll throw it to you, Nyambura, as you, from your perspective as a HR manager, what your view of the situation is.
Before I go into that, my condolences to the families who lost loved ones in Kisumu County. And as you were reading the news, I kept thinking about it, and I thought, there's a day I told my son, I need to watch TV. He was watching cartoon, and I said, oh, I need to watch news. And he says, but there's always somebody's dead. There's always somebody dead. That's all there is in news. And I thought, oh, wow, that's a 5-year-old telling me that. And it's a little bit sad to imagine that our roads are not safe. Some of our policies within the road are not governing the road users in a way that we are protecting our own. My condolences again. Just to go into the issue about gender disparities at work, I hear where Nyambura is coming from. And from an angle of an HR manager, having started in recruitment and all that, and you asking whether when we go into the affirmative action, are we going to be turning the coin? And now we will at some point be talking about where are the men, you know? I think the platform has already been set. I don't think we'll get to a point where we will say the women overpowered the men. And that's not the issue. The issue here is to bring up the women and to be able to get into a space where we feel that we have women within the leadership system. I do not want to insinuate that we will be able to overpower the men. I mean, from all angles, we are not looking to doing that, and we are also not looking at being able to bring the women on to lead the men. We are saying, can we have a equal playing ground? Can we have a playing ground that's fair for both men and women? And possibly even going back to the women hangout, it's more, what are we putting out there for the women and men together? Okay,
and from, you look reflective, or you're thinking through something here. That's Lloyd Morioki. And as a programs executive at AAYMCA, tell us actually what that stands for someone who's probably lost. Are you concerned about the balance at the workspace?
Yes, thank you. And again, my condolences to the families in the accident, and also in Mombasa at the Likoni channel. The AAYMCA actually stands for the Africa Alliance of YMCAs, which is the Africa regional office for YMCA in the continent, in Africa. The YMCA is a youth-focused organization. And yes, we are very concerned about the workplace, especially to do with relationships between men and women at the workplace. So yes, we do have affirmative action going on, and a lot of young women are getting into the workplace. But how are they in the workplace? We recently concluded a study that found that most young women who will suffer from, say, sexual harassment or sexual violence within the workplace actually suffer from this. They are victims of their own colleagues. Most of them report that, yes, my colleague, my junior even, will harass me, will send me unwanted messages, etc., etc. So we come from the place of, yes, we have more young women getting into the workplace, but how are they in the workplace? Secondly, how can we get men involved in protecting the rights of women who are joining the workplace? How can we educate the supervisors who are, in many cases, men, about this is wrong in terms of how you relate with your female colleague? And increasingly also we are seeing a lot of it, young men also coming out to say that, look, I was harassed. I was asked for this and that favor. I was threatened because I refused to give this and that favor. So our concern basically is, how are these young women existing, surviving, thriving in the office,
Yes.
and how can men be empowered to protect the rights of young women within the workplace.
Okay, and just to whoever will be ready to give the first pitch, and as the conversation continues, you might be wondering, there's a disconnect between what we're discussing and what's flashing under your screen. It's breaking news right now. I can see it from my right here, and that is, we'll keep recapping on this because it's a developing story. 13 people have lost their lives in an accident earlier on. This was around 11:30 p.m. to midnight between an Eldoret Express bus and a trailer, and there's those who've been taken to hospital and receiving treatment. We'll be getting an update from our correspondent Toko Kusa as this particular issue continues or develops as the day continues. So that's why you see that flashing right there. Condolences to the families that have been affected, and I'm sure even given the time, not many people know that this has happened to their loved ones, those who are affected especially. So we'll be given an update in terms of responses from authorities and even from the families as they receive this information throughout the day. I'll start with you in terms of the concern that has been raised in a way about the disparity, and just to help someone and also just to open it to you, hashtag AM Live as we continue with this conversation. I'm sure even my director will open the lines perhaps to, and even give you the number there to be able to call and give in your comment as you follow this conversation. Reverend, is it an issue of having and more women to come into the workforce and to perhaps close a gap that exists, or is it just to acknowledge that we need equality in the first place, whatever we're talking about, whether it's politics, whether it's workspace?
I think it is all of what you have said, Mark. Firstly, to say my thoughts are with those who have lost their loved ones. Yes. And this senseless and needless killing of Kenyans ought not to be there. We pray for them. Disparity in society is a reality that we have to come to terms with at the place of work and everywhere. It ought not to be. It is needless, it is purposeless, it doesn't achieve anything useful. But you see, society creates structures, society creates culture to especially maintain the status quo. And the status quo has been that the woman was left out, and we played the man as the main person. And this is really the context within which this issue lays in my mind, that we have a society that has overplayed this. And I've listened to very many cases of where the society wants to pretend, and I say that very carefully, wants to pretend that there is something lacking in the woman. There is absolutely nothing lacking. And in a moment, I'll be talking about lies which are told about women. And I am submitting very strongly that we need to deal with this structure and this status quo and this culture that tends to put people down for whatever reason and for whatever purpose. Men and women created equal, men and women gifted differently, but each one of them having a very strong place in society. And we need to acknowledge and accept that.
Okay, and I don't know if this is telling to a stereotype when we say women first. And I want to introduce you to the podium, to whoever's ready. And the mic on the podium has just fallen. But yes, I'd like to call you to the podium. And I don't know if Nyambura is ready to make the first, to give her remarks on this particular issue generally. And I don't know if it's telling, as you make your way to the podium as it's being fixed, she's a lead convener once more for the Women Leaders Hangout and actually putting together a meeting for this discussion later on this evening. Nyambura, are we, or is a woman joining the workspace coming in with at a disadvantaged spot?
I would say yes and no. Yes, because the woman is coming from a socialization of being told, as the Reverend said, you're less than. You should only do this. If you do this, you're trying to be something else.
Okay.
So in terms of socialization, girls at the younger age are taught to do specific things. And if you look at it from an equal perspective, it's always a lesser than space than a man. So even kids that we have at home, you bring one a child, a toy, you bring another one a car toy, right? So it's almost like by the time you're coming up, you're told you're a nurturer, you belong to care roles. This one can go lead, build, and make. So when we look at the economy and say that women are only consumers and are not manufacturers or not part of the government tenders in terms of getting things done, construction and that, and we wonder why, it's that the problem starts from the beginning.
Okay. Let me introduce this gadget. This is, I believe, a bell that Debal uses, quite fancy. Kind of wakes you up, actually, at this hour, if you're dozing off. But yes, as you were responding to that, now to give you an opportunity, you have about 5 minutes, and I'll be timing you, and just to make or give your position for the nation as to where we stand in terms of the workspace and workplace for the woman and the man. You can start.
Okay. So women have made up to 62% of the workforce, which is a great number. And we're talking about the workforce in terms of the informal and the formal. But what we realize is that the gender gap in terms of pay, in terms of rise in career mobility, is very vast. Vast in that, for every, in a research that was done by World Economic Forum, I think that was 2017, it was seen that for every 100 bob that a man earns, a woman earns 55 shillings. And you might wonder why. One is there's non-disclosure policy on salaries, but it's also that women are not able to, for that, and women are not also able to negotiate for their salaries in terms of, because we've been socialized to think that your labor costs less, even when you go for an interview and you have to ask for a salary, you shortchange yourself. At some point when we were speaking last time in the Women Leaders Hangouts, Shiro, who is one of our panelists here and also a panelist in the Women Leaders Hangouts, mentioned that you can see a woman cut herself to 22% less than an equal man in terms of during the interviews. And so the conversation is, how do we change how women value their work? And how do we also interrogate the workspace to where even hirers are aware of that, so that even in them writing the job requirements or the JDs in announcement, those things are easier. And in terms of a workspace, if you realize that you have 10 men and 2 women, ask yourself why. Is it because there's no merit among the women, or because there were no chances? And sometimes you realize that the chances, you might say, true, they're not qualified women. But if you look at the pipeline, it's because women were disadvantaged at every point of it. Maybe they went for maternity leave, and during the maternity leave, there was a job training, which men who didn't go for maternity leave got. So what happens is that men will, of course, get the management level positions, while women will be left behind. And so we're saying, and you see what happens is, when you translate that to benefits, eventually, in terms of retirement benefits, women will have less, right? And so if you go specifically to, let's say, households, when we don't have equal income or equal, what's the word? Opportunities.
Career projection.
Even in career projection, even in terms of violence, it's more perpetuated. So I think we don't have the luxury of thinking of development as a nation, where 50% of the people are not giving their best, and not because they're not upfront coming through for the labor force, but because the systems that we have undercut them. So if you're going to say that we're going to be an economy, a middle-level economy, how do we perceive that we will get there if we're undercutting half of the population in terms of what they should get?
Okay.
So we can't talk about sustainable development, decent work, which is one of the sustainable goals, and not talk about equal pay. And when you spoke about affirmative action, we have to realize affirmative action is just not about picking people and placing them in positions. It's also providing them with opportunities to get there. And so, do we need more trainings? Do we need diversity workshops in corporates? What is it that we need? Do we need to change how we advertise or portray women in advertisement when it comes to media? How do we change the social norms, the stereotypes? How do we get there?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right. You've done it in under 5 minutes, actually, and that was just 4 minutes to be exact. Actually, just about to get to 4 minutes. And you've raised some issues. You can take your seat, Nyambura. You've raised the issue of undercutting, whether it's a system that undercuts the women or they undercut themselves. And we will have Wanjiro who will be telling us about that from her stance as a HR practitioner, of course, who has interacted with women and men as they've been coming to interview for work. And for the next person and the others as well, as they make their pitch, they'll be looking straight into the camera because they'll be speaking to you, speaking to the nation, speaking to those who are in decision-making positions. So they'll be looking straight at this particular camera. And I'd like to call on to Lloyd Murioki. He is, as I've mentioned earlier, the programs executive at the AAYMCA. His focus has been on the youth as well, and he can tell us a bit more about the patterns moving forward in terms of what he's realizing, the opportunities or the challenges for the youth joining the workforce. But I don't want to preempt his conversation or his pitch, so your time starts now. Go for it.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the nation. As I mentioned, where I work, my work deals or involves a lot with young people, and I'm very concerned about the general well-being of young people and how young people are prepared for the workforce. I'm coming from a place where I know of this leader, a very strong leader, happens to be a woman. On taking up her position, one of the things she was congratulated for is being pretty. And I found that a little insulting because the leader before, who happened to be a man, was never congratulated for being handsome. So as she got into that space, already she was coming from a place where people are looking at her from already the stereotypes that have been set up for women. Now, when young people are getting into the workforce, one of the things that they are forced to encounter, they are forced to deal with, is that they are coming from a specific gender, and this gender has got roles assigned to them. So for example, when a young woman comes into the workforce, one of the things that unfortunately we find she's expected to do is to make tea. Probably she's never done it before, and she was not supposed to be doing it. And probably I, as the gentleman in that office, has more capacity to make better tea. But the stereotypes that have been prepared for her is that she will go to the kitchen and make tea or wash the dishes for everyone. Already she's entering into a space where there's a gap. Secondly, as she goes on, she may, in the process of working, get married and get children. Now, what we have found that is happening is that as she enters motherhood, she already is facing a challenge on two levels. One, as a mother, she will find that probably she's not able to, if there's a travel, she's not able to travel as much. She's not open to as many opportunities. And this is not just a gap that she's experiencing, men and women. It's also within the women workforce. If you're a mother, you're less likely to access the same opportunities as, if I may say, a non-mother, for lack of a better term. And that presents a new challenge. Does that same gap exist for fatherhood? I don't think so. Since I became a father, I think I've traveled more. I can't say the same for my colleagues who are mothers. And that's a challenge that women face within the workplace, and we are addressing it. The government has been pushing a lot around entrepreneurship. Let's think about the young women entrepreneurs. This is also an element of the workforce. What kind of challenges are they facing? Knowing that even accessing markets is difficult, accessing clients is difficult. There are people who you will go to and they will ask for sexual favors. It's very difficult for you as a young man to encounter the same challenges that a young woman entrepreneurship is facing. So already in the workplace is already designed against the young women, whether they be entrepreneurs or employees. And I alluded to it before when it comes to matters to do with how people relate within the workplace. We are aware, and there's a lot of, even I've seen a lot of memes on Twitter about how supervisors are hard on the young women employees and asking for favors, sexual favors again. But surprisingly, in a research that we did, we found that the greatest perpetrator of this sexual violence against the women, especially the younger women, the interns, is their own colleagues. These are your WhatsApp messages, your unsavory pictures that we send to each other, and unwanted remarks, even from people who are, more junior, if I may say so, within the workplace. Very uncomfortable, very difficult working space for the young woman. Are we bringing the men into the conversation in the right way? We are not. We are not preparing young men for the workplace. We are not preparing young men for affirmative action. We are not telling the young men in the university, in the college, in the TVET centers, in the schools that, look, you cannot go into this space and send this kind of WhatsApp message. You cannot send this kind of message to this young lady, even though she's an intern, because she's an intern, she's a woman, she's a human being, and she has rights. Are we preparing them? I don't think so. So do we have a transformative masculinity within the workplace? What we are finding out at the Y is that this workplace does not protect young women, especially, does not protect women as a whole, and does not prepare young men and men for the space where they are going to be, protecting the rights of young women, and also protecting themselves. Because if I get into trouble because I sent a message I wasn't supposed to, I lose my career. So what I'm saying is, boy-child manenos, very important. If we need to prepare both the young man and the young woman before they get into the workspace. We need to go to the primary school. This is something probably that should be captured within things like the comprehensive sexuality education, and things like within even the new curriculum, to prepare young people, to prepare boys and girls for that space where they are getting into, so that we can protect the rights of everyone in the workplace. I hope I have reached. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
If you have closing remarks, but you're eating into Nyambura's time. She gave you a few seconds.
Oh, she did. Okay,
yes.
Thank you. I just to say this, that also if you think about the accident, we are still speaking about a context of a trade issue. There is a strike. There is a trade issue there. So the workplace is, I think, becoming very toxic in this country, and we need to address that very urgently. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much to Lloyd Morioki. And guys, didn't you like his pitch? You could have clapped. No, I'm just joking. In the studio, you don't have to clap. You can tap the table. Yes, some themes there that he's raised that we will revisit and look at on the other side of the break, because I'm about to take a break. And we'll also hear from, that is Wanjiro and Reverend Njenga on this particular issue, because they have their pitch as well. But first, just to recap on what you're seeing flashing on your screen there, is the news that 13 people passed away in an accident overnight. And some versions have it that it happened at 11:30 and others that it happened closer to 1 a.m. But between those 2 hours, and Okokusa will confirm to us, it happened at Pala, that is 3 kilometers from Awasi Trading Center, and this is in Kisumu County. And yes, between an Eldoret bus, Eldoret Express bus, I should say, and a trailer. And there was a tractor that was ferrying sugarcane that was involved in this particular accident, we are told. We'll be getting a confirmation from this. Okokusa has an update, I'm told, and we'll be getting that after we come back from the break. Stay with AM Live.